next to my 83 Mustang, where I just got done spending about 4 weekends doing a ton of work on this car. So I'm going to be uploading several videos showing some of the things that I'm doing. There'll probably be 4 or 5 different videos uploaded over the next month. But I wanted to do this intro, explain everything I've done on this car. Now, most of these instructions are only going to work on a 79 through an 86 Mustang with a V6 or a V8. The instructions are very, very similar. I have a V6 in this, but they're very similar to the V8. In fact, if you read when you have the manuals generally say V6 and V8 in them, so they're very similar. The exception of this video is if you have a 2.3 liter, or especially have a 2.3 liter turbo, there would be a lot of differences. So these instructions would probably not work for you. And if you have a turbo, there's a whole manual for nothing but the 2.3 liter turbos up before 86. So again, I would spend the money, and if you're one of these turbo people, and get that manual. So the things I did on this car, which was a lot, I changed the oil pan gasket, rear main seal, the transmission pan gasket, front sway bar bushings, front sway bar end links, sorry. I painted the sway bar and catalytic converter. I completely replaced my exhaust from the cat back. I did a rear differential fluid change. I replaced my smog pump lines. I replaced the throttle cable, replaced the starter, and the transmission cooler lines. A couple things that happened. The reason I replaced the throttle cable is when you lift the engine up to get access to the oil pan, which is very, very tough in this car, very tough. The throttle cable should have been disconnected. Now, I have 2 different sets of manuals. One of the manuals said to completely remove the throttle cable. Another one didn't say it, so I took the easy way, and I didn't remove the throttle cable. God, I wish I would have. It was a pain. It had been easier to remove it. I had to go out and find another cable, which was a pain because it completely shredded the cable lifting the engine. So learn that lesson for me. Remove your throttle cable. The starter I replaced. The starters on these older cars are massive. They're not like a modern car, and they are a pain to get out. So if you have a V8 and the V6, much harder to get out. So while you have the car torn apart, you got to remove the starter anyways to do the work. It's a good time to replace it. I will tell you, a huge improvement. The car starts a lot quicker than it used to. It always sounded like the car was struggling to start, and with the starter replacement, that problem is gone. So it was a good thing that I replaced it again. It wasn't out, and they're about 80 bucks, but the time you're going to spend to do this work I'm showing you, you might as well replace the starter while you're at it. The transmission cooler lines, the only reason I replaced those, the ends were damaged. You can replace the ends, but the fact that there was rust on it, it just didn't, the lines didn't look right to me. Something was off with them, so I went ahead and replaced them again. They're a pain to replace when the transmission's in, so it's a good time to do it while you're at it. And plus, what I like about the aftermarket transmission lines is they have that multi-staged screw, so you can actually get easier access to remove the cooler lines in the future. The smog pump lines. So the old catalytic converters, they have a hard line that's actually a hard pipe, and you'll see that when I pull it in the video. So the catalytic converter on these cars they have a limited lifespan. They're not going to last forever. I did try to paint mine, but what I did is I removed that hard line, I cut it, and I put a actual rubber line from the catalytic converter for the smog pump back to the actual regulator. And the reason I did that is I know in the life I own this car, I have no intentions of selling this car, is that in the lifespan, I will replace the catalytic converter on this car. It is in rough condition. It's only a matter of time. So by going to the flexible line, in the future, the new ones are a lot smaller. I'll just be able to hook that smog pump line up to the new one without doing a whole bunch of work. Again, it's easier to do that stuff when the car is all taken apart. Plus that flex line, that hard catalytic converter line is a pain. It's a pain to get. It's in the way when you're trying to work on connecting the mid pipes and some stuff like that. It's just going to a flexible line is the way to go. I didn't film that particular piece of it. It's nothing thrilling. If I get comments on that, I could always put some more detail back on that. The rear differential fluid, again, while the car is up on jack stands, it's just a good time to do it. And I also replaced all the bolts while I was at it. Again, I didn't film that. There's so many good videos of people out there replacing their differential fluid. But again, if you're going to put the car up in blocks, it's the time to do it. My back end doesn't squeal, and the gears were in awesome condition. This car's only got 40,000 miles, so I didn't replace them. Now, if I would have took that cover off and noticed any damage or a lot of material on the magnet, I probably would have went ahead and at that point either replaced the gears, and I also would have replaced the bearings on the end. But they look good, and again, I'm not having any squeaks in this car. The reason I replaced the exhaust from the cat back is it was rusted. So somebody in the history of this car, and if you look at old videos, you'll see that I had dual tipped exhaust. This is a GLX model. GLX Mustangs never came with dual tipped exhaust. These were luxury cars. These were not hot rod cars. And even if you got the GLX 5.0, it only had a one tipped exhaust. And it had a turbo muffler. Somebody in this car had removed the original exhaust back and put cherry bombs on it. The problem is this is a V6. This is the early 80s V6. I want the car to be more original in its luxury side than a performance car. This is only a 112 horsepower engine. What is the point of having cherry bombs? The car did not sound that great with them. And what's the point of having dual tipped exhaust? Plus, when they installed the dual tipped exhaust, they put it too close to the bumper, and you could see where it was starting to warp the bumper. So I put the original exhaust on, ended up being a real pain in the ass. I could not find a good aftermarket setup for the exhaust. So I ended up going to a company's carid.com, and I found one. I had to do a lot of cutting and stuff to get it to work. They didn't sell an exact piece, and that is probably one of the biggest challenges replacing an exhaust. I could have went to an exhaust shop, but I was trying to go with something original, and I didn't want to spend the money to do it. The lesson learned, though, is because I didn't go to exhaust shop, I ended up using the clamps. The exhaust is leaking a little bit. So what I ended up doing is going out and buying the exhaust sealant, and I'll probably have to yank the exhaust back up off in certain pieces, but especially between the catalytic and the muffler, and use that stuff. I haven't done it yet, but it's leaking more than I would like. It's not a huge leak, but enough to be annoying. So lessons learned on that. If you're not having someone weld it and you're using those clamps, you just pretty much need to get the exhaust paste or whatever they call it, exhaust sealant. I also did a light paint job with the catalytic converter and the sway bars. They make a paint, and I show it in the video, that you can just simply spray stuff down and put a coat so it doesn't rust anymore. A lot of the metal parts under here are starting to rust. Some things are not rusting at all, which is nice, but as I take pieces off, I go out of my way just to do a real quick coat of that paint that's rust protectant. They make it in a brown and a black color depending on what you want. Again, it's underneath the car. I'm not concerned. The reason I replaced this sway bar links is they were absolutely shredded and they didn't look good. So, I mean, they literally, this is one of them, and the pieces just fall apart and it's not any good. And they squeaked. So when you went over like a lot of bumps, the car would squeak bad. And so I went ahead and replaced all the bushings and the end links with all new bushings on both sides. Made a big difference. The car doesn't make the noise anymore. So again, it'll be the video will be over multiple parts. I suspect I'll do the first video as tear down, and the second video will probably be replacing the rear main seal and the oil pan gasket, and then the sway bar links will probably be another video in the reassembly. Again, I appreciate any feedback. If there's anything you see that I could have done better, please post that in the video. But if you know a trick, please post it in the video. It's very expensive. This would have been about, I paid $4,000 for the car. This work I did was in excess of $4,000. It would have cost more to do the work that I did on this car, just in that. So you save yourself a ton of money, and I maybe spent $200 or $300 in parts, even with all the exhaust and all that. So I did it I mean, I didn't buy the cheapest parts, but keep that in mind. You save a lot of money doing this yourself. The biggest lesson learned here, so the engine stopped leaking oil. It was leaking oil really bad, but the transmission is leaking now. So do not, learn from me and do not buy a cheap oil pan gasket. Buy one of those expensive like polyurethane or a composite type gasket. I'm going to sooner or later have to go back under that car. Then the second thing is make sure you buy new bolts for the transmission. This car has got a C5 transmission. A lot of cars also have the AOD. Again, this is an automatic car. They're all very similar in how they mount and stuff like that, and they're similar in look. The key thing on those is that you need to get, for the actual transmission pan, get new bolts. I ended up breaking one trying to go up to the 18 pounds recommended, so I had to leave all the bolts at around 10 pounds because I'm afraid of tightening them up to what Ford recommends, and now I got to tap and remove that. So lesson learned, do not buy the cheap $2 gasket like I did. It's useless. It's leaking. Not huge, but it's going to be a problem. So don't go cheap on that. The rear main seal, you know, you can get a standard one on that and you're fine. But anyways, thanks for always for subscribing and putting any comments back, and hope you enjoy the video. Right, so here I am in front of my Foxbody 83 Mustang 4i model. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and stop the leaks on this car as well. So a lot of you know I fixed, and seen my videos, I fixed the rear main seal in my truck, and now it's time to do that with my car. The good news about my car is I don't need to be in a hurry for this. I can take my time and don't necessarily have to finish it in one weekend because the car is hardly ever driven. I'm just tired of it leaking in the garage, and because of the rear main seal, anytime you go after the rear main seal, you should change your oil pan gasket because it's leaking a little bit, not enough, a lot, but it's the time to do it. The gasket for the oil pan, pan gasket for the transmission as well. So all new fluids for this. I went out and bought everything I could think of: transmission, regular oil, new oil filters. I have a box full of parts for the car, all the different seals, and automatic transmission fluid. I even may rebuild a drain and flush the rear gears while I'm at it. I'm planning on lifting the car quite a bit higher than normal because of this. So right here I have 6-ton jacks. They're a decent deal on Amazon. I don't know how good they are, but as you can see, I can take the car up quite a bit. Now I'm not going to take it up this high, but it'll make working on the car a lot easier. So there's a lot of pre-work you have to do before you actually lift the car. So I'll film the pre-work and go from there. Again, this is a real dirty job. It can take 2 or 3 days. So as I'm starting this, again, my goal is not to try to finish it all at once. I may leave the car disassembled for a while in the garage. If things go well and I'm making good time, yeah, I may finish the job this weekend because it is Labor Day. But the goal right now is not to necessarily, like I said, finish it. And this video may be filmed over a little bit, but just to start the process. Again, these things, the hardest part is actually disassembling them, not assembling them. And make sure when you do this, you get RTV and some other stuff. You know, I may have old RTV laying around, but if I'm going to spend the 20 hours it takes to do this on average, I am not going to use iffy sealants and stuff like that. Again, I have a jack over there. I have a regular transmission jack. I'll definitely need that. But really, from my standpoint, the thing that's going to usually take the longest is getting the bell housing and dropping the transmission out. That can take the longest of this. This time I actually went and got one of those little carts to slide me around under the car because I'm going to be under it long enough. And again, you could use regular 2.5 or 2.25 ton or whatever jack stands, but they will not go near high enough. I mean, those stands don't even go as high as this with it down. And if the car is going to be left for long periods of time on that, it's better to have the heavier stands to do this. So again, I'll film as I'm going, and fun times.